Archlink. I am the founder of Archlink LLC, the author of Unseen Powers, and a self-proclaimed advocate for those with autism spectrum disorder. I was professionally diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder level 2 in September of 2022. And I've been working to educate myself on the topic ever since. With that being said, welcome to RAW-tism, a podcast about my autistic experience and opinions on the world. On this podcast, I will be raw and unfiltered. You are always welcome to disagree with me as long as you do so respectfully and with no name calling. Any usage of the R slur will get you immediately blocked. In the past, an autism diagnosis was viewed as a death sentence. Parents didn't want their children to be lesser compared to their peers. The trouble those with undiagnosed autism faced were ignored, and the help that was desperately needed was rarely given. The few diagnoses found were given to young boys. It was believed that kids simply grew out of it with time. No adults or females of any age were believed to have autism. This is simply untrue. I am living proof as an AFAB individual. AFAB means assigned female at birth. This is how we say that we were biologically female without alienating trans people. So I say I was assigned female at birth, so I'm AFAB, just so you know. But I am living proof as an AFAB individual diagnosed at 22 years old. Now that autism has been the subject of more research, it is more commonly known that not only can anyone be diagnosed with autism, they could also have one of the millions of comorbidities that come along. The dictionary definitions of comorbidity are the simultaneous presence of two or more diseases or medical conditions in a patient, and a disease or medical condition that is simultaneously present with another or others in a patient. The second definition better fits what I want to discuss about the subject. Basically, the diagnoses that tend to be added when diagnosed with autism. For those who listened to my previous episode, My Diagnosis, you would know that my comorbidities include ADHD and OCD, which are both pretty common. Quick disclaimer here before I dive in. I did look up the pronunciations for these words, but I do also have a stutter, so I might totally mess these up, in which case I'm sorry, and you can see the spelling on the transcript available free on my Patreon. Prosopagnosia, the difficulty of recognizing faces or face blindness, is a common comorbidity to an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. It is a neurological disorder caused by how the individual's brain is formed. Researchers have suggested that it could be a symptom of autism itself. Still, according to the DSM-5-TR, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5th edition text revision, the most up-to-date version of the diagnostic material, it is not yet labeled as such. Depression is a comorbidity that is commonly used in casual conversation rather than its intended meaning as a diagnosis. Depressive disorder is a prolonged experience of loss of pleasure or interest in things the individual would otherwise enjoy. It can also be diagnosed as a temporary condition called situational depression, which is usually reserved for those grieving or experiencing big life changes. According to Medical News Today, autism and depression are distinct conditions that can co-occur in some individuals. Autistic people have a higher risk for depression and may be more likely to experience symptoms, such as feelings of hopelessness and social withdrawal. Treatment for depression is similar for autistic people and those without autism. I've heard the same information from other sources in the past, but I like the way this quote sounded when I was fact-checking on the internet. The sad truth of this comorbidity is that depression is much more common amongst autistic people than allistics. Allistics are non-autistic people, as explained in my first episode, Let's Not Be Ableist. Depending on the source, autistic people are found to be 3 to 7 times more likely to experience suicidal ideation, injurious behaviors, and death because of their struggle with depression. That being said, please reach out if you might be included in this statistic or just tired of being down all the time. Your life is worth living. I promise you that. Your life is worth living. I promise you that. I understand that sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but those problems are temporary, and suicide is permanent. Do those that love you, including me, a favor and be patient. Life will get better. I know you've got this if you try your best. Resources can be found in the description for this episode, on the transcript for this episode, which is always free on my Patreon, and on any search engine if you type a variation of I need help or depression help.
In the time that it takes my no-glasses-clad bestie to pull her sunglasses out of her bag, I can already have mine on and ready to go. How can I switch glasses so easily? The truth is, I don't. There is no switching at all. I used to have to when I had prescription sunglasses, but now with my Pair Eyewear brand glasses, I can just pop on a sunglasses topper and I'm good to go. They have so many styles and they are so easy to use. If you want to try Pair Eyewear to simplify your glasses lifestyle, use my referral code in the description for $25 off your first purchase. That's Pair Eyewear, the glasses I wear every day.
ADHD, which is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is another clinical diagnosis that has become a more self-diagnosed disorder within the younger generations. They end up being right some of the time, but there are many who misdiagnose themselves. If you can, please see a professional before you identify as part of this demographic. You can use any healthy coping mechanism from those with a disorder to help in your own life, but claiming a difficulty that you don't have is quite harmful to the society's view of those who actually have these diagnoses. ADHD isn't simply having the attention span of a toddler and needing colorful toys in the classroom. It may look that way to the observer, but it's much more intricate than that. As I'm not confident in my ability to explain this particular disorder very well, I will quote from psychiatry.org. Many children have difficulty sitting still, waiting their turn, paying attention, being fidgety, and acting impulsively. However, children who meet diagnostic criteria for ADHD differ in their symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, organization, and/or attention are noticeably greater than expected for their age or developmental level. These symptoms lead to significant suffering and cause problems at home, at school, or work, and in relationships. The observed symptoms are not the result of an individual being defiant or not being able to understand tasks or instructions. These are the main types of ADHD. Predominantly inattentive presentation, predominantly hyperactive and impulsive presentation, and combined presentation. A diagnosis is based on the presence of persistent symptoms that have occurred over a period of time and are noticeable over the past 6 months. While ADHD can be diagnosed at any age, this disorder begins in childhood. When considering the diagnosis, the symptoms must be present before the individual is 12 years old and must have caused difficulties in more than one setting. For instance, the symptoms can not only occur at home. ADHD, as a comorbidity to ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder, is often referred to as ADHD, a combination of the two. As someone officially diagnosed with both, I enjoy identifying as being ADHD. It's a fun way to feel like a part of a community of fellow people who happen to need similar help and areas I do. A common comorbidity to ADHD that likes to tag along with ADHD is CAPD, which is Central Auditory Processing Disorder. CAPD is difficulty processing auditory stimuli. With this disorder, someone with normal and sometimes even above normal hearing can have difficulty understanding what exactly they're hearing. I struggle from this, and it makes my sensory issues a lot worse. OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, is by far the one I hear misused most in common speech. Every time I hear, "I'm a little OCD," I die a little. If I had $1 for every time people tossed around OCD casually, I'd be king rich. OCD is a long-lasting disorder in which a person experiences uncontrollable and recurring thoughts, engages in repetitive behaviors, or both. It's not needing your work area to be organized or hating seeing dust on surfaces. It's a disorder that causes significant stress, distress in the diagnosed party's daily life. Like depression, OCD is its own distinct disorder that can often have similar symptoms to ASD or can co-concur. A study in Europe found that 17% of children diagnosed with ASD are also diagnosed with OCD. Whoa. I personally have been diagnosed with OCD, but the professionals I've talked to have suggested that I could have OCPD, which is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. This differs from OCD mostly in that the obsession and compulsions lean more towards controlling the world around them. Those of OCPD are stubborn and conscientious. They have an idea of how the world should work and have difficulty differing from it. For me, I was so stuck on the rules of the Catholic Church growing up that I was rigid in the concept of rules. Very critical of myself and would experience extreme distress when others would break the rules. In my mind, there was no such thing as an exception or extenuating circumstance. Thanks to therapy, I'm in a much better place now. I still feel distressed, but I've learned to cope and accept that I can't control everything around me. Some rules will be bent or broken, but that's okay. There will either be consequences or exceptions. Even if I don't understand the reasoning, I can accept what is happening and move on. It has been a real struggle, which gives some insight into why using the term lightly bothers me so much. It is such a huge part of what makes my life difficult, and I feel horribly upset when someone uses this disorder as a cute little joke about neatness. Yeah, I like things neat and organized too, but OCD is more about behaviors like obsessively checking locks on doors, pressing the lock on my car remote 3 times, and having to redo parts of my routine if I get them slightly wrong. If you can't sleep because you can't remember whether you put your work water bottle in the correct spot but are too exhausted to get up and check, so you're stuck in a loop of questioning your will to live, you may need to see a professional about OCD diagnosis. If you just like everything organized and it's slightly annoying when you see messes, you're just a neat person, and that's okay. Being who you are is amazing. You don't need a bunch of letters to describe your personality. Echolalia, as mentioned in a previous episode, Struggling with My Filter, is another common comorbidity for ASD. Echolalia is the echoing of prior words or phrases heard and spoken as a vocal stem. Echolalia is explored in 4 different categories. The first category is immediate or delayed. Pretty self-explanatory. Immediate echolalia is the repetition immediately as the words are originally spoken. Delayed echolalia is when there's a bigger space of time between the original statement and the repeated words. This usually leads to confusion and does not fit into the conversation. The second category is communicative or semi-communicative. Communicative echolalia has meaning within the conversation. If I ask the baby I nanny if he wants milk, that question is usually answered as a yes or a no, but the baby will most likely just repeat milk to show that is what he wants. Semi-communicative echolalia's echoes are less clear from the conversation, which I see as closely related to delayed echolalia. When the baby just starts repeating milk, milk, milk long enough after I've asked the question and it no longer makes sense at the moment, that would be categorized as semi-communicative and fit better as delayed echolalia because the echo is later and no longer fits with the current conversation. My favorite category is unmitigated or mitigated. Mitigated speech is whether or not the repetition is in the same tone and pitch as how the original speaker said a word or phrase. Unmitigated speech is just repeating the same word or phrase in the same rhythm without the same tone or pitch. I love unmitigated speech. It is so funny when the kids I nanny repeat something I've said in a completely different tone or pitch. It sounds like they are mocking me, but they're just learning different speaking methods by repeating my words. The last category is ambient or echoing approval. The echolalia I experienced, for the most part, as described in the previous episode, struggling with my filter in case you forgot the last 2 times I said it, is considered ambient echolalia because I tend to subconsciously repeat words that I hear within my environment. Echoing approval is similar to communicative echolalia. Same example applies here. The baby repeating milk to show that he wants me to get him some will also sometimes echo my words to show approval of the idea I present. Echolalia is common in toddlers as they learn to speak, but this does not automatically mean that the child has autism or will continue to have echolalia as an adult. This is an example of how I see autism as feeling like a toddler in an adult body. Autistic children tend to learn language a little different than allistic children. What are normal behaviors in children become uncommon behaviors in adults. These differences can carry on into adulthood when they develop into disorders that impact everyday life. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is pretty much what it sounds like. A disorder that causes stress based on post-traumatic events. PTSD can consist of flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, nightmares, triggered distress, and physical responses to mental strife. Adults with autism are much more likely to experience symptoms of PTSD than allistic adults. That is, unfortunately, because the world is not structured in a way to help autistic children, and the trauma is created that affects autistic people later in life. Being neurodivergent is a great recipe for bucket loads of trauma, even when your early life looks perfect on paper. This is one of the reasons why I advocate for autism education and acceptance. If we can change how the world views autism, maybe we can help make PTSD and other similar disorders less common in autistic children. Now for one of my favorites, which is GAD, Generalized Anxiety Disorder. I say this sarcastically because anxiety has been a hugely negative part of my life. Anxiety is something that everyone feels at some point in our lives and helps us filter the world around us. Anxiety disorders develop when someone's natural anxiety is being a bit too dramatic and affects their daily function. Feeling anxious about a test is normal. Feeling constant worry and nervousness about the basic things in life is not supposed to be normal, but for some, it is their reality. GAD is very likely to be a comorbidity for those with autism. The fear of being outed to the world as different or wrong is extreme and drives autistic people to mask their behaviors. Masking occurs when neurodivergent people suppress their quirkiness in order to appear neurotypical, which I'll explain more deeply in a future episode. I already wrote that episode, so I can give you a hint. It's called Masking for Survival. Okay. Anxiety helps strengthen an autistic person's need to STEM, ability to dive headfirst into their special interests, and resistance to changes.
Since I stopped using my Circle water bottle to save a little money, I've been drinking about 1/3 of the water I used to. Circle was the miracle that kept me hydrated. I thought I could make it work with just tap water, but I miss those flavors so much. My favorite was peach mango, and my favorite caffeinated flavor was strawberry watermelon. But they also have so many other flavors, including electrolytes and vitamins. Don't make the same mistake I did. Use my referral link in my bio for 35% off your first starter bundle order of $35 or more. For a limited time, you can also get a free white stainless steel bottle. Those bottles are tough. I had a blue stainless steel that withstood a year with the kids I nanny throwing it around. These stainless steel bottles will definitely stand the test of time. Try Circle today using the referral link in my bio. You better stay hydrated. Hydrate or dihydrate.
GI, or gastrointestinal issues, are a common comorbidity to autism. This can include GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease, lactose intolerance, constipation, IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, hiatal hernia, Crohn's disease, peptic ulcer disease, hemorrhoids, celiac disease, and gluten intolerance. I may go further depth into these with a further episode, but I don't currently have plans to cover them. All I will say now is that I personally suffer from lactose intolerance, chronic constipation, and gluten intolerance. I know, TMI. Connective tissue disorders are another comorbidity common with an ASD diagnosis. I am not well versed in these, but the most commonly mentioned ones are EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and HEDS, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Dyslexia is another common comorbidity that I do not suffer from, nor know much about other than its definition as a learning disability affecting the ability to read and process written language. The way I view it is having a form of CAPD for reading instead of hearing. Unfortunately, I do not have as much knowledge and information to share for these last few comorbidities. Still, I'd love to hear about your experiences or the experiences of people you know with these disorders. Feel free to reach out to me at EmKay Archlink@gmail.com or RAW-tism podcast@gmail.com. That is RAW-tism without the dash in between. It's just RAWTISM pod@gmail.com. And I'll gladly record an updated episode with more to share. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, but I hope that you learned something new about autism comorbidities. If it was not clear from my anecdotes within the episode, my comorbidities include ADHD, OCD, MDD, echolalia, PTSD, GAD, GI issues, and CAPD. I doubt these are all of them, but they're the ones I know currently. I hope I satisfied your curiosity about my life, while also teaching you about the realities of ASD that go beyond just having an autism diagnosis. Regardless of your thoughts and feelings toward me, I have a love for every one of you. You are wanted by many, loved by many, and so many want you to stay in this world. I am one of these manys and always will be. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for listening to RAW-tism. Once again, I am EmKay Archlink, the founder of Archlink LLC, where our mission is to spread autism acceptance and education. Supporting this podcast supports our mission. If you'd like me to come and talk at your school, please fill out the Google form in the RAW-tism section of EmKayArchlink.com. Your support means everything to me. I love you all. Remember to drink water, eat some nummies, and have your best life. Bye! Would you like to see more of me? In that case, visit EmKayArchlink.com for links to my TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. My book, Unseen Powers, is available in hardback, paperback, or digitally through Amazon. I have no idea. Why did I have an accent every time I said echolalia? I'm still doing it. Echolalia. What even accent? I don't even know. Maybe it's a part of echolalia. That would be really ironic. That'd be so fun.